Welcome to yet another edition of the Stats and Stats podcast, where today we're going over UFC. What are we on? 312 at this point? Driscus du Plessis versus Strickland 2. First things first, make sure you smash that like button, give a follow over on Twitter, over on Instagram, over on Blue Sky. Again, we're still working on our TikTok. It is what it is. Yeah, man, I literally was cooking and burnt the shit out of my hand, and it hurts less than the last fight card at UFC Saudi Arabia. Got absolutely bent over to the point where I damn near turned it off. I didn't want to keep betting. And then we sat here and called the Sergey Pavlovich by decision. Didn't bet it. And then, of course, it hits at plus 1200. And it was just an absolute shit show. All the locks lost. Fuck Mike Davis. I don't know why he's pulling guard. Saeed Nurmagomedov all of a sudden decided he wanted no cardio. Thomas Peterson looked great and then got absolutely nuked. I don't even know at this point. Con Awfully has the worst wrestling I've ever seen in my life. Israel Adesanya wanted to go out there and get knocked out by Imavov in round two. We could not hit anything. I think the only thing we got right was MVP and the over in the Shara fight. And that was the same fight. It is what it is, but luckily unlike NFL, where your team loses in the playoffs and you have to wait 8 months to watch them again, we're right back at it just a week later at UFC, and that's the beauty of betting MMA. You take your licks, you get buried, and then you come out and you just try to ignore like it ever happened 7 days later. So we have a pay-per-view offering. It's not the greatest pay-per-view in the world, but it is fights nonetheless, and I am itching to get the taste of UFC Saudi Arabia out of my mouth. Just for the love of God, let's just start anew. So let's go ahead and start with the very, very first fight of the night. We are looking at, let's pull this up for you. We're looking at Hun Sung Park at minus 210 going up against Naum Dragal to Mendem. I can't fucking say it. Naum Dragal to Mendembral at plus 180 to Mendembral at plus 180, whatever. Over 1.5 is minus 200. Under 1.5 at plus 150. A whole bunch of canceled fights. So this is the first one. Let's start with to Mendembral. We're just going to say that to keep it short. And to Mendembral. He's not good, but he is young and he's improving each and every time. He's 26 years old. He has a pretty decent amount of power on him. He has a 5-inch reach advantage. On paper, most of his wins are by submission. His BJJ looks okay. I think it's a little overrated. I think all the subs are a product of who he's fighting. His striking looks better than his jiu-jitsu to me. And it's not bad, and he hits decently hard. 52% takedown defense isn't the greatest, and his offensive wrestling isn't the greatest. I know he has a wrestling background, but it's not great. He's really just a striker who is okay at wrestling and jujitsu. He has it in his back pocket, but he should not be. He should not be using that as his go-to. He's another one of these road to UFC guys, which none of them are really good, to be honest with you. Luckily, this is his second fight in the UFC. It's not his first. He debuted against Carlos Hernandez, who's okay in his own right. He went out there and gave Carlos a fight, man. He ultimately lost a split decision to Carlos, but part of that is just Carlos struggled with just the physicality of this guy. This dude is just freakishly strong and very athletically gifted. He kind of reminds me of Davison Figueroa, like a 26-year-old Mongolian version of Davison Figueroa. Just very, very physically gifted. Not the greatest wrestling or jiu-jitsu, but can do it. But when he hits you, you feel it, and people just seem to struggle with his power. On the other side, we have another road to UFC guy, only a winner in Park here in Hong Song Park. Park is 29 years old. He's currently undefeated at 9-0. He throws with pretty decent volume, which is interesting because he's generally a counter striker. Usually counter strikers have low volume, and he has okay volume for someone that does rely on countering. He has 100% takedown defense. He doesn't offensive wrestle too much, but defensively he's pretty solid. His level of competition isn't the greatest. That's probably part of the reason as well. His jujitsu's okay. His cardio's pretty good. He backs up a lot, but part of that is because he likes to counter strike a lot. We haven't seen him in 18 months. I don't know if he's been coming off an injury or what he's been doing, but it has been almost 2 years since we've seen him in the octagon. But he's a finisher, man. 9-0, and most of his wins are inside the distance. A lot of rear naked chokes, a lot of like counter strikes to the liver we have against Shannon Ross. Again, that was Shannon Ross, so take that with a grain of salt. It's just the level of competition, man. It's 4-4. Sorry, 4-4-5. How do you get that record? 2-2, 0-0. The best guy he fought was 6-3. Even on the road to UFC, like 6-1, I guess you can say. Sung Choi, 8-3. These aren't the greatest records. These aren't the greatest fighters. And then he came into the UFC, made his debut, and fought Shannon Ross, the glass cannon himself. So, um, I don't know. He's all right. It's just he can also get chin checked quite a bit himself, and that does scare me with Brawl's power on the other side. Both of them are just okay wrestlers. Both of them are okay on the ground, and both of them are pretty decent strikers. They both hit decently hard, and it might just be a matter of who hits who first, the counter striker or the very aggressive, lanky striker. I think it's pretty 50-50. And this fight has Two Men in Brawl as a plus 180 dog. In a fight that I think is a coin flip, I'm obviously going to take the value here. And the line is moving. He was a much larger favorite last week. So jump on the line, get that CLV while you can. So the pick is going to be to Menden Brawl. The bet is going to be to Menden Brawl. Next fight of the night, we have a UFC darling and Cody Steele at minus 240 going up against another road to UFC winner and Rong Zhu at plus 205. Over 1.5 is minus 195. Under 1.5 at plus 165. Let's start with Cody Steele. And the reason I say he's the UFC's darling is because they keep talking about him. He was on Contender Series. The guy said he just didn't want to fight that day, his opponent. And then they brought Cody Steele back. They gave him his money. Dana White gave him his flowers, saying, wow, this guy intimidated his opponent to the point where he didn't want to fight him. They brought him back just like 2 or 3 weeks later. And then he went out there and had a fight of the night against a pretty decent guy in Blair. I think Blair's pretty good. He's at a good camp. He's at Syndicate MMA. And he's been a part of the UFC banner for a while. He has a lot of grappling matches. You'll see him grappling like UFC elites too, and Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez and such. He's a lot in all these Fight Pass invitationals, even years and years ago, fighting Phil Rowe, not in MMA, but in grappling. So he is a BJJ, a black belt. He's very good on the ground. He has pretty good wrestling. I think he did it a little bit collegiately, and now his striking is starting to match his wrestling and grappling. He hits very hard. He looks the part. This little jack monster running around. He's only 29 years old, so he's in his prime. The UFC loves this kid. He's had competition against high UFC caliber level guys already under their banner. Now they can say he's an MMA guy. His power is pretty decent. He can get suckered into a brawl, though. It does scare me. His striking is getting much better, and he likes to show that, but he's still not the greatest striker in the world, so he doesn't need to be getting suckered into these things because he's going to get chin checked one of these times because he keeps his hands really, really low. And he dips his head whenever he swings, and he just like dips his head into counters. So if he runs into the right guy, they're gonna put his lights out as he's sitting there dipping his head trying to brawl. He needs to go out there and make sure that he keeps up that pretty decent cardio he has, get that grappling game going if need be. I mean, if he's fighting an absolute can, yeah, you can go out there and you can just brawl and have fun and look good. But if you're in the UFC now, a lot of these guys are pretty decent, pretty heavy hitters. He's extremely hittable. He probably needs to utilize that grappling that the UFC has seen him do for years. On the other side, we have Rong Zhu, and he's an interesting case. I like this kid. I think he's really talented. He's just had a lot of weird stuff happen in his career. First of all, this is his second stint in the UFC. He was in the UFC when he was only 21 years old. I bet against him in his debut against Pipe Vargas or Rodrigo Vargas. He went out there and showboated and lost. Then he came back and he fought Brandon Jenkins and beat the absolute dog shit out of Brandon Jenkins. Then he fought Ignacio Bahamondes. And Ignacio Bahamondes is pretty decent in his own right, main training partner of Bilal Muhammad. And he got choked out in round three. And they said, you know what, Rangju? You're still only 22 years old at this point. You're super young. I think we signed you too early. Go back to the regional scene and we'll keep an eye on you. He goes out to UAE Warriors, which is one of the toughest regional scenes, and gets a early second round finish. Okay. He then goes on to the road to UFC. So you have these guys that come from the road to UFC and enter the UFC. We have the guys that come from contender series and enter the UFC. We've never had anyone be in the UFC, then go to road to UFC, and then come back. Like it was a very strange route for Rongju. But he won the road to UFC as he should. That's not the greatest competition, and he blew right through all of them. Looked phenomenal. Now he's older. He's 24. You think he's entering his prime. He's ready to go. Big favorite over Chris Padilla. Gets elbowed, and his eye swells up, and they stop the fight. In a fight that you could say he was winning. So I don't know. You go from a huge prospect, you get upset. They say you're too young. They send you to the regional scene. You go through the road to UFC to give it some credibility. They give you a winnable fight, and then you have a doctor stoppage. Like he's all over the place. But I think he's really good. I think he's really talented. He has an inch and a half reach advantage in this matchup. He's really, really good on the feet. He has 85% takedown defense. He throws with decent volume, has good cardio. He himself is okay jujitsu. It's not Cody Steele's, but it's okay. He's very, very fast on the feet. His problem is he can get countered as well. So both of these guys can be a little hittable at times. But I think Rangju is really, really good. He's still only 24 years old. Yes, he's gone through three iterations of the UFC. Yes, he's been around for years, but he's still only 24, and you just forget that he's not even in his fighting prime yet. Technically, I always consider the prime like 27 to like 31 is when you're like at your peak, and he's not even there. He's still 3 years away, but he's 24 years old. So again, these are two UFC darlings going at it. Neither one are from Australia. Please keep in mind that this fight card is in Australia. So the first two fights have nothing to do with the home crowd. This is just UFC matchmaking. And I think it's a pretty 50-50 fight. This is Cody Steele's debut. He's going to be on a pay-per-view in his debut. I know he's 7-0, but he's too big of a favorite here in this matchup. I think Ranju's really good. Plus 200 is asinine. So for the second fight, just like the last card where we got killed, I'm dog hunting again. I'm going to take Ranju, and I'm going to end up betting Ranju. Next fight of the night, we have Quinlan Celicad at minus 550 going up against Anshul Jubilee at plus 400, over 2.5 plus 125, under 2.5 minus 155. Let's start with Celicad because this is going to be the first one where the crowd will influence a little bit. This kid is the Australian kid. He's 25 years old, hence me saying kid. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage. He is 7-1 coming off of Dana White Contender Series, and this is going to be his UFC debut. He was on last season of Contender Series. He has really good jiu-jitsu. He has pretty decent volume when he's on the feet. His wrestling could be better. Australians just in general aren't known for having great wrestling. I wish it was better to accompany his jiu-jitsu because his jiu-jitsu is really solid. Like he's very, very good on the ground. It's just how does he get there? His striking's not terrible. He's just more of like a death by a thousand cuts, and he'll go out there and he'll pick and paw at you, and stay really busy on the feet, and then try to mix it into takedown. And once he gets you down, that looks good for him. Problem is when he's on the feet and he's getting hit, it looks very bad optically. He gives really big reactions when he gets hit. Not good. Not a good look for the judges. And he backs up quite a bit. He just backs up and jabs and head kicks and jabs and body kicks and jabs and head kicks and just kind of tries to distract you. It kind of reminds me of like a head tap in wrestling where there's nothing to it but to literally just cause a moment of distraction before you can go in and get your takedown. And that's what he's doing with his jabs and his head kicks. He ultimately wants his fight on the ground. He is a BJJ guy. He no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He knows where his bread is buttered and he will do anything to get you down to the ground. On the other side, we have Anshul Jubilee, who I is ironically enough a Road to UFC winner. I guess it's a Road to UFC card. And Contender Series are all fighting each other. Um, I hated Anshu Jubilee's tape. I think he looked really, really, really bad coming into the UFC. I thought he looked so bad that I bet Mike Breeden against him, and I also bet Mike Breeden round three. And sure enough, this dude went out there and got knocked out by Mike Breeden in round three, and then they caught Mike Breeden. So that's interesting decision making. Nothing against the guy himself. There's not a lot of Indian fighters. What him and Punja is all I can really think of currently. I'm trying to think if there's another Indian fighter. It might just be Jubilee. Good for him representing his country. He's 30 years old, but we haven't seen him since that Mike Breeden fight, and that was a year and a half ago. His striking's okay, nothing to write home about. He throws pretty decent volume when he's on the feet, but when he does so, he gasses out. He has really bad cardio. His wrestling's not that great. And he himself has 63% takedown defense, and that's huge because he's not fighting anybody. Like, who on earth is taking him down? Mike Breeden's not a wrestler. Jekka Seregi is not a wrestler. And Road to UFC guys, no, they shouldn't be taking you down. That's not a good look at all. His level of competition again has been atrocious. So he's just essentially going out there and he's just a can crusher. I can't tell you what he's really really good at. He is serviceable in all areas outside of cardio. This dude he will not be good in round three. Round three he has nothing left. He'll survive round one and two. He'll be fine. Round three he literally just falls off a cliff. So if you have good cardio. Or you have a good ground game, that's an issue for Jubilee. Salakad has both. He just doesn't have great wrestling. But Jubilee's 63% takedown defense is going to make me go the Salakad route. Now, do I trust this kid, this 25-year-old kid making his debut at minus 550? No, not really, especially because he does not like to get hit. Jubilee hits hard enough where it's an issue. So then I'm staring at this under 2.5, and it's minus 155. I mean, it's better than 550. I'll go ahead and I'll pick Salikad, but I guess I'll end up betting the under 2.5 and play it safe just in case Jubilee catches him. And if he gets Jubilee to the ground, he should sub him pretty easily. So I'll take the under 2.5 at the better value. Next fight of the night. Someone please talk me out of locking Kevin Jousset at minus 240. He's fighting Milkuli at plus 205, over 2.5 minus 155, under 2.5 at plus 125. Let's start with Kevin Jousset. Kevin Jousset's an interesting case. He's from France, but he trains at City Kickboxing, so I don't know if the crowd is going to generally they like him, but he's fighting actual Australian on this card, so I don't know if they're going to boo him or if they're just going to play it fair. I'm not too certain here. But he's 31 years old. His striking's not bad. It's just very stiff. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just other than stiff. It's not very fluid at all. He looks like he has absolutely no rhythm if he's on a dance floor. Like he's just a very, very stiff fighter. His wrestling's okay. He doesn't bust it out too much, but he does have a judo black belt. And we've seen it in the UFC when other people try to take him down. Brian Battle continually tried to take him down, and he was tossing Battle around left and right, hip toss after hip toss. He does have a legit judo black belt. It's just offensively he doesn't use it much because he likes to strike. Jiu-jitsu, he's okay. He's not bad there anyway. He's another one of these guys that are just a generalist. He's not good. He's not bad anywhere. He doesn't have a ton of power. He's not super chinny. He has pretty decent cardio and pretty high volume. He has 100% takedown defense currently, which is a good look. But he fought Kiefer Crosby and Kenan Song and Brian Battle. None of them are good wrestlers. None of them could wrestle at all. So yeah, that 100% takedown defense is a little skewed. But again, he's a judo black belt. He does know how to stuff a takedown. He's just decent everywhere. There's nothing wrong with Kevin Jousset. He's not anything I'd write home about. If he fights someone that's really, really good wrestling, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick against him. If he fights someone that's a really, really good striker, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick against him. But if he finds someone that's just okay at everything as well, or has an avenue, or it's where someone's like really like Kenan Song, who's a really good striker but doesn't throw a lot, or someone who is a decent striker but can't wrestle to save their lives. That's when you bet Kevin Doucette. And we're looking at Jonathan here. Jonathan's not the greatest striker in the world. And when I say not the greatest striker, I mean horrible. He is Australian. So again, I don't know if the crowd is going to be behind him or if it's going to be split. He's 25 years old as well. I almost got him and Silicad mixed up, to be honest. But when I went back, I double taped everything. He has a 2 inch reach advantage, which is good if he knew how to use it. He has really good jujitsu, and his wrestling is not bad. It's pretty decent. It's just, again, he's a little physically weak. He gets tossed around all the time. He's very hittable, and I've seen him knocked out in the past. His cardio, he does tend to slow down a little bit. His chin is not the greatest, although he's only been knocked out once. He's been dropped a multitude of times. He's just kind of physically slow. So I said Kevin Doucette's not the greatest athlete per se. He's just kind of stiff. Um, Jonathan is just not a great athlete in the sense of like just power and durability. He's just kind of physically, he looks like he's 25. It's like his man muscles haven't came in yet. And he can kind of get tossed around a little bit. And he has really bad optics when getting hit. When you hit this guy, he just like starts to fall over. Again, he's really good on the ground. And if he takes you down and gets on top, you are in trouble. But we have the Doucette hips and a judo black belt. Can he take Doucette down? I don't know. I think he's going to struggle to. And if he can't take Doucette down, Doucette will kill him on the feet. It won't be relatively close. So I'm going to pick Kevin Doucette. I'll end up betting Kevin Doucette. I think he's safe for parlays. I might end up locking Kevin Doucette. I don't think he's a great fighter, but I think he matches up very well against Jonathan. Next fight of the night is something I'm perplexed at. We have a short notice replacement in Colby Thicknees at plus 400 going up against Toporia's his brother Alexandre Topuria. I actually think it's his older brother. Let's see, how old is Alexandre? 29, right? Yeah, he's 29. Yeah, so it's his older brother. He is so I'm sorry. Let's take Taporia is minus 550. Colby Thicknees is plus 400. Over 1.5 is minus 130. Under 1.5 at plus 100. Let's start with Taporia since we're already here. He is 5-1. He has pretty good wrestling. He has pretty solid jujitsu. His striking, he's very physically strong, but it doesn't really look like he knows what he's doing. He's not the greatest striker in the world, which is weird because Taporia, his bread and butter is his striking and his close boxing. He missed weight in his last fight. He came in at 139, so keep an eye on these weigh-ins. And he seems to slow down in his fights. He doesn't seem to have the greatest cardio, which his brother doesn't either. So maybe it's a family trait. Again, a decent wrestler, decent jujitsu. His striking's not good, but he hits hard. But his cardio, he can't sustain it. He has bad cardio, not great optics when he gets hit. And in fact, his one career loss was a third round KO, mainly off of just exhaustion. Like the dude looked absolutely gassed out there, and his opponent was able to take advantage of him. Now, that's saying a lot because when you go back and you look at this guy's record, you talk about can crushers. Jesus Christ, this guy started his career before his little brother Ilya. He started his career in 2015. Fought someone that was 0-3, got the win. Then he fought someone that was 1-1, got the win. Then he fought someone making their debut, thinking it was easy, and that's the one where he got KO'd in round 3. Then he took a big break, 2015 to 2021. He took 6 years off and then decided, you know what, I want to fight again, and decided to fight someone that was 7-18. Obviously won. Then he fought someone, you think that was just to get back into the swing of things. No, he came back and fought someone that was 1-9. And then he fought someone in his last fight that was 3-1 when he missed weight. So yeah, he's going out there and he's getting ground and pound finishes in round 1. But the guys he's fighting are literally 1-9 and 7-18, 1-1. Like these guys aren't good. And the one guy he fought that was 0-0 at the time is now 4-0, and he's the one that went out there and killed Topuria. So he fought one decent guy, and just wasn't ready. Like got absolutely dismantled. So I don't know. I think I know he's only in the UFC because his brother is a champion, and they're doing Ilya a favor. On the other side, we have Colby Thicknees, who's also in the UFC currently because of a favor. He is a main training partner and a good friend of Alexander Volkanovski. So it's funny because Volk is going to be in his corner, and Ilya is obviously going to be in his brother's corner, and then they're supposed to fight each other, but there's rumors that that fight might be off, so we'll see. But Cody's taking this fight on short notice. Initially, Topuria was supposed to fight, I don't even remember, Cody Haddon, and he was going to lose. Cody Haddon was going to beat the shit out of him. But they're giving Colby Vic knees a shot here, slickness, thickness, mainly because he's Australian, he's local, he's going to have the crowd behind him 100%, especially walking out with Volk. And he has a shiny undefeated record in UFC friends. Again, only 25, so he's constantly improving. He himself is more of a grappler, a very good wrestler with very good jiu-jitsu. His striking is not great. It's okay though. It looks pretty. It doesn't seem to have like a ton of power on it, but it looks good when he's throwing it. He more or less is very vicious ground and pound. I talked about Jasmine Jazz the Vicious ground and pound, who I think is like the epitome of ground and pound. This dude is Jasmine level ground and pound. Like it is vicious when he gets you down there. He is taking it on short notice, so you got to be cognizant of that. And he just fought like 2 months ago. So I don't know if there were any ailing injuries or anything like that. He's not really going to have a good camp. He's going to have about a 2 week camp here. But his cardio seems better than Toporia's. The wrestling is pretty 50-50 in my eyes. And the jiu-jitsu is pretty 50-50. I think Colby's the better striker. And I know he's taking this on super short notice, 2 week notice. But he's 25. He's probably just always in shape. And if that's the case, he has the better cardio. So he has more advantages and he's plus 400. This makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand what Vegas is doing. Maybe they see something I don't. I am unequivocally betting Colby at plus 400. So the pick is Colby and the bet is Colby thickness. Next fight of the night is Con Wang at minus 500 going up against Bruno Brazil at plus 375. Over 2.5 is minus 185. Under 2.5 at plus 155. And I think we're getting a gift here, even at minus 500. Con Wang is going to absolutely kill Bruno Brazil. Con Wang went out there as like a minus 1200 favorite and lost in her last fight. Being cocky. She needed it. She needed to go out there and lose. She's 32 years old, and she is world-class striking. Very, very good striker, and you're going to hear them talk about it over and over and over again. She beat Valentina Shevchenko in a Muay Thai fight when she was like 21 years old. Like she was super young, and she went out there and beat the hell out of Valentina, which is unheard of. She has extreme power, especially for a 125-pound fighter. Her jiu-jitsu is not great, but we've seen her work on it. Her wrestling's not great, but we've seen her working on it. She's just coming back from that loss. Like I don't like that she was just concussed three months ago. It's a little short for my liking. I know it's going to show that she got choked out by Gabriela Fernandez, but she got absolutely annihilated, and then Gabriela snapped on a rear naked choke to finish it. But she got cracked. Like she was basically out on her feet, and because she was celebrating, she was literally out there killing Gabriella, got cocky, started dancing around, and got caught while dancing. Kind of like how Anderson Silva lost his belt to Chris Weidman clowning out there. That's what happened to Kong Wang, and she kind of deserved it. So we're going to have a super hungry Kong Wang coming back. She's a little cocky, but she does throw a lot of volume out there, has 100% takedown defense, and she just kind of reminds me of she's chasing down Valentina, the current champion. This is the women's MMA version of Poatan. She's a huge girl. She's a very good striker. She has good power, and she has a kickboxing win over the champion. It is literally Poatan 2.0, and she is coming. And I know she's coming off a loss. Doesn't matter. The UFC wants her and Valentina, and especially Valentina being later in her career, that's exactly what they want. On the other side, we have Bruno Brazil, who is going to be the sacrificial lamb here. Bruno Brazil had a lot of hype behind her coming into the UFC, and she's done nothing but disappoint. She moved over to the Fighting Nerds, which is good for her. The Fighting Nerds very seldomly lose, even though Mayra Bueno Silva just did. But Brazil is 31 years old. She has okay striking. She was known to have some crazy power. That's just not the case. It was on the regional scene, but not in the UFC. She hasn't knocked out a soul in the UFC. Her wrestling's bad. It's not good. It is not good. You're going to think, well, she won her last fight over a meatball Molly McCann because of the grappling. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh yeah, she went out there and just out wrestled Meatball. Maybe that's what she's gonna do to Wang. No, man. She tried to get some takedowns. Molly stuffed them. She hurt Molly with a body shot and then got on top of her. And then Molly threw like a spinning kick and fell down. And then Bruno got on top of her. She never actually took down Molly McCann. Molly took herself down and she dropped Molly with a clean liver shot. But she didn't get the job done because she hits hard, but she doesn't hit that hard. Her jujitsu's all right, but she doesn't have good cardio. And if her plan is to go out there and wrestle with Wang the whole time, she's gonna gas herself out. If her decision is to stand up with Wang, bad idea because she's very chinny. She gets chin checked all the fucking time. In her UFC debut against Denise Gomes, she went out there and got knocked out in the second round. Like she gets chin checked all the time. She does not have a good chin. She does not have any volume. She's very hittable. She doesn't have good wrestling. And to make things even worse, the fight against Molly, the fight against Luma, the fight against Shauna Bannon, all of that was at 115. This fight's at 125. She's going up a weight class. Ah, is that going to help her wrestling? Absolutely not. Will that help her chin? Yeah, maybe she's sucking too much weight, but now she's running into Kong Wang. That's not what you want to do when you're going up a weight class. So I am undoubtedly pouring money into Kong Wang. She's definitely the pick, and I kind of like the under. Minus 500 is a pretty steep price, but the chinny Bruno Brazil going up a weight class to fight the hardest puncher at 125. Yeah, I'm for it. I'm gonna pick Kong Wang. I'll probably have her in some parlays, but I'm also gonna take a few stabs at that under 2.5 at plus 155. Speaking of unders, Tom Nolan plus 135 going up against Vladislav Borashov at minus 155, under 1.5 minus 110. Sorry, over 1.5 minus 110, under 1.5 minus 120. Yeah, man, Tom Nolan fights usually hit the under. The dude's wild. He's definitely so. Let's go ahead and like start with him since we're talking about him. Super young, still only 24 years old. Will definitely have the crowd behind him. He's the Australian in this matchup. He has okay striking. He has sneaky good jiu-jitsu. His wrestling's not great. He's very hittable on the feet, and he's very chinny. He does throw a ton of volume out there, but it's just like he has no regard for what's coming back his way, and that seems to keep hurting him. Um, Although he's only 8-1, and you're saying he's only been knocked out once, true. But Alex Reyes dropped him and took him down like 4 times. Victor Martinez dropped him, and he was one of the worst fighters in UFC history. Nicholas Mota put his lights out. Bogdan Grad, who we just saw last week, he actually knocked him out in 1 minute and 30. That's a good look. But even on the regional scene, I saw him drop quite a few times. He's just chinny. He's just so big. He's the tallest. Him, Jalen Turner, and Joel Alvarez all fight at 155, and I have no idea how they make that weight. They're all 6'3". And I think Tom Nolan might have to end up going up a weight class. I know Sam Patterson had to, and he was super chinny until he went up. I think Nolan has 170 written all over him because he cannot keep making this weight. The more he does, the more his chin is going. He's a good fighter. He just fights young. He has a lot of young tendencies. And again, he's only 24 years old. Some of the stuff, some of the times he's getting countered are just really him being reckless and young. But you can't be reckless with a bad chin. So he always scares me if he's fighting anyone that hits hard. The only thing is he gets away with it because he hits hard and he can knock out anyone or choke out anyone at any time. He's kind of kill or be killed. So they gave him Slava Claus. Slava Claus is no joke. Slava Claus has sneaky power. He is 33 years old. World class striker, very, very good on the feet, very, very high volume, hits very hard, just 35% takedown defense. That's the issue. Tom Nolan, good on the ground, not the greatest wrestler, but he does hit hard, and he can knock out Slava because Slava's old, man. He's 33, but he's had so many undocumented fights that his chin is just starting to hit. He's 33 years old, but physically he's in his 40s. It's just his chin is slowly deteriorating. We saw him drop by Chase Hooper. That's concerning. We saw him drop by Nazim Sadikov. Really bad. James Lawlentop hurt him in their fight. Like, he's just continually getting dropped in all of his fights. Granted, he comes back, he wins some of these. But he is getting hurt quite a bit. And it's not because he's just not durable. It's just years and years of getting hit in the chin, eventually it's going to go. His cardio's okay. But all in all, we have Tom Nolan, who's an absolute killer, killer be killed. And then we have Slava Claus, who hits extremely hard and his chin is starting to deteriorate. That's why it's under 1.5, because either one can knock out the other one. But I think Tom is coming out here in Australia. The strategy should be to come out there and take down the 35% takedown defense Slava Claus. But he's young and he's reckless. And I think he's going to come out and he's going to go get pumped up by his hometown crowd and go out there swinging dicks. And if he does that, he's in trouble. He's probably going to get KO'd, which is why Slava is minus 155. But if Tom decides that he's going to actually play it smart and get the takedowns, I can see Tom as a live dog. He can totally get this done. And he can catch Slava. Slava's chin is starting to go. So I understand why the line is the way it is. I'm definitely staring at the under, but it's a 1.5 and it's minus 120. I don't know what to do with this fight. I think this is just a sheer pass and just enjoy, take some shots and enjoy the violence. Hmm. I'll go ahead and I'll pick Slava Claus. But gun to my head, Tom does have more ways to win. I guess I would bet Tom. But I just ultimately want to stay away from this fight. This isn't a fight you should be touching. So the pick is Slava. The bet would be Tom. But for the love of God, just enjoy that fight. Next fight of the night. I'm pissed at Vegas. I am pissed because they have the line right, and I thought they were going to be suckers. We have Jack Jenkins at plus 190 going up against Gabriel Santos at minus 225. Over 2.5, minus 185. Under 2.5 at plus 155. Let's start with the Australian in this matchup and Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins, you're going to hear them talk about it over and over and over again. He's broken 3 people's legs in a fight with his leg kicks. He loves leg kicks, and goddamn, he throws them hard. The dude is a leg kicking savant. He has classes on how to throw multiple versions of leg kicks. Like, this guy loves his kicks. He's 31 years old, is the Australian, so the crowd behind him. He has good striking. He has 76% takedown defense. It's decent. His jiu-jitsu is not great, but he's definitely working on it. It's definitely getting better. His cardio's decent. He's very kick heavy, like kind of like Shara is, just a whole bunch of leg kicks, high kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, body kicks, high kick. Like, it's just back and back, basically all kicks. He's not great when he's getting pushed backwards, though. I noticed that. Maybe it's because he's so kick heavy. He likes to set stuff up and throw. If he's backing up, it's a lot harder to like shoot takedowns and kick while you're getting backed up. So he's not a fan of that. He likes to go forward, but it's very measured. And I wouldn't call it pressure per se. He doesn't just march forward, but he just kind of, it's very lateral type pressure. It's very measured. It's very fun to watch. He's a very good fighter. He's a very just cerebral fighter out there. It's just he has a little bit of a deficiency in jiu-jitsu, and his wrestling is getting better, but it's still not great. On the other side, we have Gabriel Santos, who I think is a top 10 fighter at 170. I think he's very, very, or sorry, at 170, at 145. I think the kid is good. He's 28 years old, so he's in his prime. He's going to show 2 losses in the UFC. When you go back and you watch them, he doesn't. He first and foremost took a fight on short notice against Lerone Murphy in Britain. Like, that's absolutely insane. Lerone Murphy is a top 5 guy at 145 right now. He went into his hometown and lost a split decision that everyone thought he won. I locked Lerone Murphy. I thought Lerone Murphy was the shit. I thought he was going to make it look easy. And I thought Lerone Murphy lost the fight. I truly did. Santos won that fight, and it was some hometown cooking, and he got absolutely robbed. His next fight, he fought our guy in David Onama. The one deficiency that Gabriel Santos has is that he sometimes gets excited and he likes to brawl, and you can chin check him. He's never gone out, per se, but he's been dropped a few times. David Onama found the right button and actually put him out cold. So that is the first time he's ever been knocked out. So then he's effectively 0-2 in the UFC, losing a split decision he should have won against Lerone Murphy, a top 5 guy. And then David Onama, who's a top 10 guy, he was winning the fight and then ultimately got cold cocked. Like, it just happens. You're like, oh my God, he's a fraud. They gave him Yiza. Good Lord, he beat the absolute shit out of Yiza. It wasn't even close. We saw the real Gabriel Santos, and I was hoping that people were believing the Jack Jenkins hype. He's at home. We're in a good line on Gabriel. No, he's minus 1 or 225, but he should be, man. He is Charles Oliveira 2.0. He has a 2-inch reach advantage in this matchup. He's younger. He has good striking. He has good wrestling. He has a very active guard and good jujitsu. His cardio's okay. It's just him getting chin checked. That's his issue. He loves to move forward. And he's been averaging at least 2 takedowns every fight. He's fighting David Onama, he's fighting Lerone Murphy, and he's getting multiple takedowns. If you think he can't take down Jack Jenkins, you're not paying attention. Gabriel Santos on the feet could get knocked out by at any point. But on the feet, he's going to throw more than Jack Jenkins. When it comes to wrestling, Jack Jenkins will not take down Gabriel Santos. Gabriel Santos will most likely take down Jack Jenkins. And on the ground, it's not close. It's literally like me rolling with Charles Oliveira down there. It's not going to be relatively close on the ground. Gabriel Santos is the better fighter everywhere here. Jack will have the crowd behind him. But as long as Gabriel doesn't get knocked out, he should dominate him, and you're getting a pretty decent line at minus 225. The pick is going to be Gabriel Santos. The bet is going to be Gabriel Santos. And that's the reason that is the prelim headliner, because they know both these guys are super exciting. So we're going to go into the main card here. We have Jake Matthews at minus 210 going up against Francisco Prado at plus 180, over 1.5 minus 215, under 1.5 at plus 175. Let's start with Jake Matthews. He's going to be the Australian in this matchup, have the crowd behind him. He's in his prime at 30 years old. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this matchup. He has good striking. He has really good jiu-jitsu. He has pretty decent wrestling. He does back up in all of his fights, but that's by design. He loves to counter strike. Like, that is his bread and butter. He will sit in the pocket and counter you and then go back and move backwards and then counter you. Like, it's very interesting. He can be chin checked, so that's a little bit of a concern. He doesn't necessarily always get put out, but he's susceptible to getting dropped multiple times in fights. And to quote the great Dogger Pass podcast, he's a little bit of an apple pie shitter. He loves to lose as a favorite. He always goes out there as like a minus 200 favorite, and he finds ways to lose, whether it's to Matthew Semmelsberger because he continually struck with him and got dropped instead of just wrestling the guy with 50% takedown defense, whether it's getting choked out by Anthony Rocco Martin. Sean Brady, he was supposed to lose, so no shame there. It's just time and time again he goes out there. Michael Morales, he was supposed to lose, and he looked really good in the Michael Morales fight. But then Phil Rowe in the next fight, Phil Rowe has like 30% takedown defense, and he struck with him way too long before he got the takedowns and made it really greasy and barely snuck through each round. He makes things more difficult than they have to be. I think Jake Matthews is a really, really good fighter, and he has the right game plans. So I can't say he has bad fight IQ. It's just if the game plan is to strike, he kind of like just fucks around a little bit. And then if the game plan is to wrestle, he strikes for like 3.5 minutes and then decides to go for his first takedown attempt. It's like he just waits too long. I don't know what he's doing out there. But ultimately, he's such a good fighter that he can kind of get away with it most times. This time he's fighting Francisco Prado, and although I think Matthews wins this fight 8 times out of 10, it will scare me all 8 times. Prado is moving up a weight class from 155 to 170. He's 22 years old. He's still super, super young. So every time we see him, he's going to get better. The thing that scares me about him is the fact that he's an absolute berserker. He's not good at all, but he is aggressive. It's very reminiscent of Bogdan Grad and Lucas Alexander last week. He will march forward nonstop, will not take a foot backwards. He will not take a step backwards. He's very, very hittable when he's on the feet because he doesn't believe in head movement as he's just pressuring forward. But he has decent striking and he hits really, really hard. To this point, he's been pretty durable. Yes, he's 12-2, but he's not ever been knocked out. In fact, he hasn't even really been rocked at all. He just marches forward, eats the shots, and he's more than willing to let you hit him 4 times so he can hit you once. I know he's moving up a weight class, but he still might have the power edge over Jake Matthews. So when Jake Matthews stands his ground and gets in the phone booth and counters, it's scary because there's going to be some violence coming back his way. Prado has good cardio and will continue to pressure like that. 25% takedown defense isn't good. And he did fight Jamie Malarkey in his debut, who kind of fights just like Jake Matthews. So he's already fought this type of guy, and he lost. So as long as Matthews doesn't get caught, Matthews is going to win this fight. It's just this guy is an absolute marauder. Like he's not going to stop moving forward and throwing power shots. So Matthews has to be on his game for 15 straight minutes because I don't think he's going to finish Prado. Frado can definitely finish him, but Matthews is the better fighter. It's just don't get caught. Just don't get caught. I will have my ass clenched the entire fight, but at some point, I'm hoping that Matthews is able to get the takedown and I can breathe a little bit. So the pick is going to be Matthews. The bet is going to be Matthews, but you'll be shitting your pants the entire fight. Same thing if you pick a side on this next fight. We have Rodolfo Bellato at minus 170 going up against Jimmy Crute at plus 145. Over 1.5 is minus 145. Under 1.5 is plus 115. Let's start with Bellato. Bellato low key sucks. Bellato is 28 years old. He'll have a 3.5 inch reach advantage in this matchup. He has really good jiu-jitsu. His striking offensively is fine. Defensively, a huge liability. He's extremely chinny. He does not move his head whatsoever. Like he refuses head movement. His wrestling's okay. He throws pretty decent volume. He always pressures forward. He does not take a step backwards. And in regards to his wrestling, it's a lot of clinching, though. A lot of just up against the cage, kind of like the Bruno Lopez versus Godzilla fight like a few weeks back. Although he will get the takedown eventually, there's a lot of just cage fighting and dirty boxing going on. And he needs to do that because he doesn't move his fucking head. So when he's out in the open, he gets cracked all the time. And not only is he getting cracked, he's getting knocked out. Like the dude has two losses. They're both by knockout. Yes, they're both to Vitor Petrino, who hits really hard. But this guy fought fucking Ihor Patoria and got dropped. And the fight should have been stopped. But whoever the ref was wanted to see a murder that night, and they let it continue. Bellato eventually woke up. Ihor gassed himself out trying to knock out Bellato. And then Bellato finished Ihor. So it was a fun fight. It was fun to watch. It was intense. But most guys, if they have better cardio than Ihor, they finish that fight. Bellato doesn't move his head. And you can't do that when you have a bad chin. He gets dropped all the fucking time. And he knows that. That's why he goes out there and just clinches against the cage the whole time and ultimately tries to get you to the ground where he can work his ground game. On the other side, we have Jimmy the Brute Croup. Jimmy's 28 years old. He'll have the crowd behind him, which is nice. He has solid jiu-jitsu. He is okay striking, but he also refuses to move his head. He is okay wrestling, but he does slow down a little bit in his fights. I will say Bellato does have good cardio. I left that out. Very, very good cardio. Jimmy, no, he will slow down. Jimmy himself is a little bit chinny. And the biggest red flag with Jimmy is the fact that he went out there and announced his retirement, and now he's back. So if you're talking about retiring at 28 after losing a fight, you're a little bit of a mental liability. He's a little bit of a head case. He himself is a little bit of an apple pie shitter. He'll go out there and win or lose fights he's supposed to win all the time. 60% takedown defense isn't the greatest number, especially fighting Bellato. But again, he's pretty decent on the ground, but so is Bellato. So the only difference is Jimmy's fought the who's who. He fought former champ in Jamal Hill. He fought fucking Paul Craig. He fought Sam Alvey's not good. He fought Alonzo Menafield twice. He fought title challenger Anthony Smith. Like he's fought some really, really good level competition. Bellato is not. The best guy Bellato fought was Vitor Petrino twice. Outside of that, he hasn't really fought anybody. So I don't know. Jimmy overall is probably the better fighter, but he's just as chinny and he slows down. He doesn't have the better cardio, but he'll have the crowd behind him. So I don't fucking know. I really, really don't know what to do with this fight. I thought Jimmy was going to be a favorite because he's the bigger name, and I was going to bet Bellato as a dog, but Bellato's the minus 170 favorite. I don't know. Then I started looking at the over under, but it's set at 1.5. This is another one you just need to stay away. Ultimately, I think what I'm going to do is pick Bellato to win because that's what my gut initially said, and after doing the fight tape. But I'll go ahead and trust the line with Jimmy Crute at plus 145, hoping for some hometown cooking. You should stay away from this fight. Don't bet this fight at all. But this is pick Bellato, but I bet whoever the dog is, and that just happens to be Jimmy Crute. Next fight of the night. We don't have an over under on this for whatever reason, but we have Taliesin Teixeira at minus 150 going up against Justin Tafa at plus 130. And if you're saying who the hell is Taliesin Teixeira, that's a good question because I don't know why he's the third fight on the pay per view. Third to last fight on the pay per view. He's 25 years old. He's coming off of Dana White Contender Series. This is going to be his debut. He is 7-0. He will have a 9-inch reach advantage. Out of his 7 wins, all of them are round 1 finishes. He carries a ton of power, but he gets hit quite a bit, and he doesn't have good optics when he gets hit. Dana loves this guy because he's an absolute giant. He is huge. How tall is this guy? Does it say in here? 6'7". He is 6'7". He might be the tallest heavyweight on the UFC roster right now, and he's massive. He's all of 265. So Dana just loves him some big juicy dudes, and this guy is a monster at 6'7". He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So if you go down to the ground, you're playing with fire. If you're on the feet, he hits so goddamn hard. You're playing with fire. The thing is, he doesn't wrestle at all, so I don't think you're really scared of his black belt. In addition, we have no idea how his cardio is because he has 7 first round finishes. We know that he's hittable. I know I've seen him chin checked, but I've never seen him in round 2. I don't know if he can keep this up, and I don't know if he. I just have no idea how his cardio is if someone is able to survive. On the other side, we have Justin Tafa. Justin Tafa himself is a striker. He has pretty decent takedown defense. I know it shows 50% takedown defense, but when he fought Carl Williams, it looked pretty decent, and he had a pretty decent get-up game, so it's definitely improved. But he's a striker through and through. He's the Australian and will have the crowd behind him. 31 years old. He himself carries a ton of power. He throws a pretty decent amount of volume, but he's hittable too. So you have 2 power punchers that both can be chin checked and both are extremely hittable. His jiu-jitsu is not great, but he does have a tendency to move forward and pressure. Teixeira usually moves forward and pressures, so they're just going to meet in the middle. That's why they're the third to last fight. They expect this to be a round 1 finish. They think these 2 guys are going to meet in the middle of the octagon, swing heavies, and whoever falls, falls. And Dana's just going to be sitting there saying, if you die, you die. To be honest, either one can knock each other out. I'm not buying Teixeira hype. I don't think he's that great, and he's only 25. He's fought literally no one, all cans. Is Justin Tafa good? No, not at all. So he could definitely go out there and just kill Tafa. But Tafa could also fraud check him. So at the end of the day, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the last one. This is a stay away unless you want to bet the under. But I don't know what the over-under is. And I know the under is going to be 1.5 and something crazy, like minus 220. So the pick is going to be Taliesin Teixeira. The bet is Justin Tafa just because he's the underdog. But I'd rather stay away from this fight. Next fight of the night, we have Wei Li Zhang minus 110, Tatiana Suarez minus 110. Over 2.5 is minus 240, under 2.5 plus 190, over 2.5 minus 240. This is interesting because I bet Tatiana Suarez earlier in the week at plus 130, and she is now minus 110. All the money in the world is coming in on Tatiana Suarez. She is the truth. She's the real deal, and no one knows who she is, mainly because she's 34 years old and she never fights. She is 10-0. Last fought 2 years ago. And when you look at her record, she just kind of fights every 2 years. Like, it's pretty bad. But she is an Olympic level wrestler. She won world tournaments in jiu-jitsu. So she is an Olympic wrestler with a black belt. That's scary. Her striking's not great, but it's serviceable. She knows what she's doing on the feet. Just not a lot of ill intent. Not really trying to knock you out, more or less trying to distract you so she can get the takedown. She has good cardio and she can continue to do it. She'll back up quite a bit, but unlike others, she can still get takedowns while backing up. She's fought a good level of competition and she'll have a 3-inch reach advantage. She doesn't look great when she gets hit. She reacts very big. But at the same breath, she's not getting hit too much because she's just getting the takedown. And I'm saying she's 10-0. She doesn't never fights. How is she fighting a good level of competition? When she does fight, they put her through the ringer. Her last fight was Jessica Andrade, who is a former champion. She went out there and submitted her in round 2. Montana De La Rosa, she didn't fight in 4 years. So they gave her a comeback fight. up a weight class at 125, and she went out there and beat a top 15 girl by choking her out in the second round. Before she took that 4 year break, it was 2 years ago, she fought Nina Nunez. Nina Nunez at one point was ranked third in the world. She beat the absolute hell out of Nina Nunez, took her down like 8 times. Carla Esparza, have you heard of her? Yeah, she's a former champion of the weight class. Just a great wrestler. Went down, took Carla Esparza down a million times, and then ground and pound finished her after beating the absolute shit out of her for 14 minutes. And then the fight before that was Alexa Grasso. Have you heard of her? Yeah, former champion up a weight class at 125. She went out there and took her down and choked her out in 2 minutes. So, yeah, she very seldomly fights, but when she does, she's out there not beating, she's finishing world champions. Like this girl is good, and she has engaged Apache Mix, who people think it's a Bellator champion, who think is Marab's biggest component at 135. They think Patchy think people really think Patchy could beat Marab. And honestly, I understand it. I think that's a really good fight, and I hope it happens. On the other side, we have the person you do know in Wei Li Zhang. Wei Li Zhang's the current champion, has also fought a really good level of competition. She has really good striking, pretty decent power. She's physically strong. She has good jiu-jitsu. She has good wrestling herself. She throws a ton of volume, and she will pressure forward, which looks good to the judges. Everything is really, really, really good. Here's the problem with Wei Li Zhang. First and foremost, she's 35 years old. And that is that marker when you start to deteriorate. 35 is that number where you start to slow down a little bit. Not only is she 35, no one talks about this, 50% takedown defense. She's not really fighting a lot of girls that are going to go out there and wrestle her. Um, and the one time like Yan Janan's not going to wrestle her. Amanda Lemos isn't going to wrestle her. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is not going to wrestle her. Rose Namajunas is not a wrestler, but took her down twice. She did fight Carla Esparza for the title, and Carla Esparza took her down in round one. Like, took her down and got back control. Yeah, she took her down. So it's not unprecedented that Tatiana Suarez can take her down. And that's where the ideology is coming from. That's why everyone thinks Tatiana is going to win this fight. And you know what? I agree. That's why I bet Tatiana at plus 130. But if for any reason Wei Li Zhang becomes a dog, Tatiana hasn't fought in 2 years, and she just she gets a lot of second round finishes because she's like using the first round to get back into the groove of things. You can't do that against Wei Li. Wei Li can put your lights out in round one. You can't play around with Wei Li. So I don't know. I still lean Suarez. I picked Suarez. I already bet Suarez. Do I like her as a favorite? No. Do I love her as a dog? Yeah, she's my favorite dog. So right now it's a pick 'em. And the over under is 2.5, and all Suarez finishes are always in the round two. So ultimately, I'll just stick with my gut. I'll stick with the wrestling and jiu-jitsu. 50% takedown defense is too much to overlook. The pick is Tatiana Suarez. The bet is Tatiana Suarez. And honestly, stay away or bet it now before she becomes a favorite. And then that takes us to the main event. If you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button. Give a follow over on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever there's social media. There is the Stats on Stacks podcast. We have Driscus du Plessis at minus 205 going up against Sean Strickland, now at plus 175, which is funny because these lines were flipped the first time they fought. Over 4.5 is minus 170. Under 4.5 at plus 140. Let's start with Sean Strickland. And my pure hatred of Sean Strickland. He's not that good. He's 33 years old. He might have the crowd behind him. He had the crowd behind him when he fought Izzy in Australia, which was weird. And so he'll probably have the crowd behind him here too. He has good striking. He has great cardio. He throws a ton of volume. He has 77% takedown defense. He's fought a good level of competition. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and no one just ever sees it. He's good on the ground. He's good everywhere. The guy is really, really good. He doesn't have the greatest chin in the world. He'll tell you that. But he's very, very hard to hit. He's very, very defensively sound. And he is a defensive fighter. That's what pisses me off against Sean Strickland is that he goes out there and he tells you that you're going to go to war. I'm willing to die. Men are going to bleed. And then he goes out there and teep kicks you and jabs you while parrying the entire time. Parry, teep kick, jab. That's all he does. That's literally all he does. It's the most defensive style I've ever seen in my life. And then he goes and calls people bitches and says they're scared to die. Like, you're not going to kill anyone with a jab, Sean. A teep kick ain't taking anyone out. It's so fucking annoying. All he does is talk about war and never goes to war. He teep kicks and he jabs and he parries. That's all he fucking does. He's great at it and it's winning him fights, but I just hate his demeanor and his talk, and his shtick is just a little old to me. Can't stand him. On the other side, not a fan of DDP either. And it's not him personally, it's the fact that he keeps getting away with being bad. He's not good. He's not a good fighter. I don't care. I don't care that he's 22-2. I don't care that he's a champion. When you watch this man fight, you don't look at him and go, wow, that guy's wild. You look at him and go, oh my God, how is he winning? And he won't stop doing it. He's 31 years old. His striking's not great. It's okay. His jiu-jitsu's not great. It's okay. His wrestling's not great. It's okay. He is a certified generalist with bad cardio that finds a way to win. He has a ton of power. I'll give him that. He hits decently hard. His schedule is great. He beat Rob Whitaker. He beat Sean Strickland. He beat Adesanya. That's a great record. Like, you can't take anything away from the guy. I don't want to say he's a bad fighter. He just looks like a bad fighter. His game plans are okay. The last fight he fought Strickland, he took him down 6 times. He struck with him, then he wrestled. Then the next round, he struck with him, and you didn't really know what he was going to do. He confused Sean and ultimately got the split decision win. He himself throws a ton of volume. God damn, he's hittable on the feet. He blitzes in and lunges in. He's super slow, very, very hittable. His wrestling's not that good, but he gets like stupid head and arm takedowns. His jiu-jitsu's not great, but he'll submit you with a choke. Like, he has two good. He has a rear naked choke, and he has a guillotine, and he's very good at those two. It's not, you're not scared of him rolling for a knee bar or hitting you with an arm bar. He has two moves, and he's just so good at them that it's weird, man. He's not good, but he does just enough every single time to get the job done. I'm not his biggest fan, but I fucking hate Sean Strickland. And he's already won this fight before. I see he probably does it again. So I'll go ahead and I'll pick DDP, but I don't know if I can bet him at minus 205. He won a questionable split decision the first time. So it was literally, it's a 50-50 fight on paper. It was a literal 50-50 fight when they fought the first time. And you have a plus 175 line next to one of them. That makes me want to bet Sean. But then I have a friend, and his number one take is that when it's a rematch, if it went to a decision the first time, it's going to end inside the distance the second time. If it went inside the distance the first time, it's going to go the distance. Like, every single time there's a rematch, the opposite happens, whether it goes to the distance or not. And this theory is high. Like, this theory is very, very high. It seems to always be right. And they went to decision the first time. So if that means it's going to be inside the distance, it's under 4.5 and it's plus money. That makes me lean DDP. I don't think Sean is finishing DDP. I think DDP would finish Sean. So my eyes say DDP. This theory says the under 4.5, and Vegas is going to try to make me bet Sean. So I don't really know what to do with this fight. At this point, I'll go ahead and I'll trust the two there. Two are better than one, so I'll pick DDP. I'll probably ultimately bet the under 4.5. I think he gets it done inside the distance. I don't know how. Maybe he catches him this time. But that's UFC 312. Strickland versus DDP. Uh, Not the greatest fight card for a pay per view, but in all honesty, it's an interesting one to bet. There are like 4 fights you need to just stay absolutely the fuck away from, but pretty confident in the other one. So it is what it is. It's a night of fights, looking to dust off last week, start anew, and let's make some money, baby. Let's get after it.